Welcome to Strip Cover Lit. I'm Dalton Gentry, and I'm here for another Quickie this week. This time, Edgar Allan Poe once more, The Cask of Amontillado. Now, I know I said OctPOEber was done, but I have lied. I forgot we were going to do The Cask of Amontillado. So let's start with the first question. What is this? This is a short story by Edgar Allan Poe. It's only a few pages long, 3 or 4, I think. And it was first published in 1846 in Godey's Lady's Book. So let's do some great quotes from this. First quote, "I shall not die of a cough. True, true," I replied. That is the sinister nature of Edgar Allan Poe there. That's just wonderful. It's dark humor more than anything, but it's playing with the audience's interpretation of what's going on with this story here. And really, that's just a creepy line. So I think that's got to be up there if we're going to be talking OctPOEber. Next quote, "It was about dusk one evening during the supreme madness of the carnival season that I encountered my friend." I like this one again. This is once more setting up that very eccentric narrator that Poe has given us so many times before. As we've seen in The Telltale Heart, in The Raven, everything we've done this month for Poe, the narrator is always just a little bit off. So that is classic Poe right there. We need to set that up. And finally, the last quote, "The 1,000 injuries of Fortunato I had borne as best I could, but when he ventured upon insult, I vowed revenge." That is a hell of a way to start off a piece. So that really engages the audience right there from the beginning and sets up more of a backstory than anything. One of our big complaints with Poe is his short stories are so short that as soon as they start to build up, they immediately end. You get very, very little backstory, very little character backstory, but this is creating one. Although it is going to be creation in a mystery for the audience to interpret, this is telling us that there is something here before there has been some wrongdoings between these two characters. Number 3, I'm going to sell this with a sentence. This is why they say alcohol will kill you. Little tongue-in-cheek there, but hey, why not? Let's go with it. As far as Poe is concerned, Cask of Amontillado, I would say, is a great choice if you're going to sit down and enjoy some Poe. A lot of people read The Telltale Heart, a lot of people read The Raven, and the Cask of Amontillado is often used in early academic settings as well, but I don't think it gets a lot of the appreciation that it really deserves. So let's do 3 best things. Poe is a master of capturing true fear. Now, every time this month that we've talked about Edgar Allan Poe, I've tried to break it down based on Stephen King's reasonings of horror, being that terror, horror, and then gore. This is pretty much full terror. There is no horror monster per se. This is just the build-up to the fear. At the end, you get a little gore with the bearing alive, but that's not way out there as compared to other stories. So I think Poe really does great here in capturing fear itself. Second, Poe's poetic writing style is very apparent in this. Now, we really complimented The Raven because Poe's poetic style is just glorious. It really goes straight off the tongue. It's very easy rhythmically, and just wonderful to hear. Poe's writing, a lot of that bleeds into it as well. If I may, my third quote again, "The 1,000 injuries of Fortunato I had borne as best I could, but when he ventured upon insult, I vowed revenge." I don't think Poe gets a lot of the credit he deserves for being a great writer. I think he was an innovative writer, and maybe this is just because it's so beat over your head in early academia that a lot of people discredit Poe, but I think his writing style is something that should be appreciated. And finally, the amount of time you invest in reading this is nothing compared to the payoff. As we've said with many Poe short stories, these are incredibly short. This will take you 10-15 minutes tops to read. And you will enjoy it, you will get something from it in that time period. But there are worse things. The 3 worst things. Unfortunately, much of the surprise is lost here. And again, I think that comes from the cliche, everybody has to read Edgar Allan Poe in high school. Therefore, you know how this is going to end. You know he's going to be buried alive looking for the Cask of Amontillado, which is unfortunate. However, still a good read. As with most Poe, it ends just as it's getting good. I always complain about Poe in this regard. As soon as he's built up anticipation, as soon as he's building to a climax, it ends. And finally, due to the brevity, we miss out on the development of characters. Now, I know you might say this is counterintuitive to what I just said earlier, but no, you still are not getting a lot of character development here. I think this is good because Poe at least gives us some semblance of a backstory to make these characters realistic, but still we get nothing of that. It's just, again, left to the audience's imagination, how they want to interpret that. So some literary elements in the Cask of Amontillado. As we said before, Poe's poetic writing style is something that you should really take into account when reading this. I think a lot can be learned from his writing style. It's very lyrical, it's very flowing, but it's also very dark, so there's a wonderful balance going on there. Terror versus horror, that's another thing that we've just praised Poe for. He is a master of separating terror, horror, and gore. And honestly, he does a great job of usually capturing true terror. The anticipation, the fear of the unknown, and the building to the fear. Not just the monster in the room, but that fear of what is to come. And finally, a real surprise. If you want to say it's cliche and it's been overdone, that's fine. I will probably agree with you. But at the time period that this was published, this would have been a hell of a surprise to be reading. So I think that's something we should really appreciate. A few questions for further discussion here before we wrap this quickie up. I would really like to know what led up to these events between these characters. I feel that there's a good story there that we're missing out on. And that's something we're never going to get, we're never going to know, but I think it really could have been developed, and it would have made a more interesting piece to know what was going on here. Can we suspend disbelief enough to believe that a man can be buried like this? It seems a little humorous that he is just pretty much very happily sitting as he's being buried alive. So you do have to suspend your disbelief just a little bit to make this story believable. And finally, where does the fear in this come from? This is, in my opinion, a fear of trusting someone, of trusting a friend who is perceiving himself as a friend, and it's the fear of getting close. You never know what you're getting with other people. You can only really trust yourself. So when you're allowing someone else so far into your life, it can be bad for you, and I think Poe really shows this off here. Finally, a few recommendations. If you do like Poe and you do like Poe's poetic style, I would highly suggest that you read The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. It's another one that everyone's probably read already, but take some time to really read it and appreciate it. Read it out loud. It will change the poem completely. I would also suggest Guts by Chuck Palahniuk. Now, if you are a fan of this channel and you've seen this channel before, I've never finished Guts, and there's a reason for that. But that surprise that Poe had captured at this time, Palahniuk captures in modern times. And I think he's on par with what's going on here. And wow, if there's a story that'll just knock you out. And finally, I would suggest The Road by Cormac McCarthy. That's kind of an off one there, I understand. But if you want someone who is capable of capturing just grim, modern horror, and terror that goes along with horror, and just setting the darkest, most depressing ambiance ever, you definitely need to get some Cormac McCarthy in your life. Finally, I would like to rate this poem an 85. It was pretty good. It wasn't life-changing. It's not my favorite Poe, but it is an enjoyable read. I think there's a lot of literary worth there, and a lot of things you would be able to pull from it. So if you like this kind of thing, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below, and also make sure you follow us on social media. We are at StripCover on Twitter and StripCoverLit on Facebook.